Ethan Turner never believed small moments could change lives until the day he met Rachel Carter. It was an ordinary Tuesday in Portland. The city was damp from an early morning drizzle, the streets glistening under gray skies. Ethan rushed into the glass building of his marketing firm, coffee in one hand, laptop bag over his shoulder, trying to beat the clock inside the office. The air was filled with soft chatter, the hum of printers, and the faint scent of rain on coats. As he moved toward his desk, his eyes caught someone sitting by the window, a woman he'd seen before but never really noticed this way. Her name was Rachel Carter. She was focused on her laptop, her brown hair slightly curled at the ends, and a thin silver ring on her left hand sparkled under the light. She looked up at that very moment. Their eyes met for a brief second, long enough for something unexplainable to pass between them. She smiled politely, then returned to her screen. But Ethan's mind didn't move on as easily. He tried to push it aside. She was married. That much was clear. And he had no business thinking about a married woman. But throughout the day, that image of her calm, graceful, distant, kept replaying in his head. Later that evening, when most of the office had emptied, Ethan stayed behind to finish a presentation. The rain had started again, soft and steady against the glass windows. When he walked to the break room to grab another coffee, he found Rachel there, standing near the window with a cup in her hands. The city lights reflected on her face, giving her an almost dreamlike glow. "You're still here?" he asked, surprised. She smiled faintly. "Deadlines. They always seem to find me." He chuckled. "I know that feeling. I was hoping I wasn't the only one working late." For a moment, silence filled the room, comfortable silence. The rain tapping against the glass seemed to bridge the distance between them. Then she asked quietly, "Do you ever feel like you're just existing? Like your life isn't really yours anymore?" Ethan looked at her, unsure how to respond. Her tone wasn't dramatic. It was honest, almost fragile. "Yeah," he said after a pause. "I know exactly what that feels like." She smiled softly, but her eyes told another story, a story of exhaustion, loneliness, and longing. They talked for nearly an hour. About small things that weren't small at all, about dreams left behind, places they wanted to see, and the kind of life they once imagined for themselves. She told him she used to paint before marriage. But somewhere between responsibilities and expectations, she lost that part of herself. Ethan shared his dream of opening a small bookstore, a place filled with old pages and quiet afternoons. Before leaving, Rachel said, "Thank you for listening. It's rare to find someone who actually does." "Anytime," he replied, and meant it. As she walked away, he noticed her touch her wedding ring. It wasn't a tender gesture. It looked hesitant, thoughtful, almost heavy. That night, Ethan lay awake, thinking about her voice, the way she smiled through sadness. He told himself to forget it. But something deep down told him this wasn't the end of their story. Days passed. And what began as polite greetings turned into small conversations, then longer ones. They'd share coffee breaks, talk about work, and sometimes when the office was quiet, they'd sit together in silence, watching the city through the tall windows. One evening, the weather changed everything. A thunderstorm hit the city unexpectedly, and by the time most of the employees had left, only Ethan and Rachel remained. The power flickered, then went out, leaving the office dimly lit by emergency lights. "Well," Ethan said, trying to lighten the moment, "looks like we're stuck." Rachel laughed softly. "Could be worse." They stood near the window, watching the rain hammer against the glass. The storm outside seemed to echo the turmoil inside them loud. Wild and impossible to ignore. Rachel spoke after a long pause. "Do you ever think about how life might have been if you'd made one different choice?" He looked at her, his heart tightening. "Sometimes I do. But then I remind myself we can't live on what-ifs." She smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. "Maybe. But sometimes what-ifs are all we have left." The thunder rolled across the sky. She was close enough for him to notice the faint scent of her perfume, something light and familiar. Neither of them moved. The silence between them was no longer empty. It was full of everything unspoken. When the lights came back on, Rachel took a small step back and whispered, "I should go." "Yeah," Ethan said quietly. "Good night." But that night didn't leave either of them. Something had changed, something both of them felt but neither dared to name. The next few weeks blurred into a rhythm of glances, shared laughter and long conversations that never crossed the line but somehow danced around it. They met for coffee at a small cafe near the park where Rachel always ordered cappuccino and Ethan stuck with black coffee. It became their unspoken routine. Once, during one of those meetings, she said, "I think people assume that marriage means happiness, but sometimes it just means you stop trying to find it." Ethan didn't know what to say, but her words stayed with him long after she left. He wanted to tell her that she deserved more, that everyone did, but he didn't. Some truths were too dangerous to speak aloud. One evening, as they walked out of the office together, Rachel told him her husband, Daniel, was often away on business trips. She said it casually, but Ethan sensed the loneliness behind the words. She laughed softly and said, "Funny, isn't it? You can share a house with someone and still feel alone." He looked at her, his voice low. "Yeah, I know that kind of silence." The connection between them grew in the quiet spaces between words, between looks. He started noticing small things. How she always hummed quietly when she was nervous. How her eyes softened when she talked about her younger days. How she tried to sound strong even when her heart seemed tired, but every time his feelings grew stronger. That ring would catch the light and reality would pull him back. It was a reminder of everything he couldn't have. Then came the night of the company dinner. The restaurant was warm and filled with laughter, music, and the clinking of glasses. Ethan hadn't planned on sitting near Rachel, but fate had other ideas. She looked stunning in a simple navy dress, her hair tucked behind her ears. Every time their eyes met, something inside him twisted as the evening went on. Their conversations grew lighter, their smiles more genuine. Yet beneath the laughter, there was tension like two magnets trying not to pull toward each other at one point. When the lights dimmed and soft music played, Rachel leaned slightly closer and said, "You make things feel different, Ethan." He didn't know how to respond. His throat tightened, his mind raced, but he only managed to faint. "You do too." The night ended with her leaving early. As she brushed past him near the door, her hand grazed his. It was brief, accidental, or maybe it wasn't. She whispered, "We need to talk." Her voice trembled slightly, but her eyes were steady. Then she walked away. Disappearing into the crowd, Ethan stood there for a long moment, heart pounding, unsure whether he should feel guilty or grateful for what had just happened. On the drive home, her words replayed in his head. "We need to talk." He didn't know what she meant, but he knew that nothing about his life or hers would ever be the same again as he lay awake that night. He remembered her voice, her smile, the sadness in her eyes, and the way her ring had glimmered under the restaurant lights. It wasn't just jewelry, it was a symbol of everything that kept them apart. And yet, deep down, Ethan couldn't stop wishing that one day she might take it off, not for him, but for herself. He closed his eyes, knowing the story they had begun was already far beyond their control. The next morning, Ethan woke up to the sound of rain again. Portland had a way of matching his moods, lately gray, quiet, and unpredictable. He couldn't shake the echo of Rachel's words from the night before. "We need to talk." It wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it. Something about her tone carried both fear and longing. Like she had been holding something in for far too long at work. She wasn't at her desk. Her absence felt heavier than it should have. Every time he looked toward her chair, he felt a strange emptiness, as though he had lost something that wasn't his to begin with. He tried to focus on his tasks, but his thoughts kept drifting toward her. By noon, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Rachel. "Can we meet after work? Same cafe? 6:30. He stared at the screen for a long moment before typing back, "I'll be there." The day felt longer than usual. Every tick of the clock pulling him closer to something he didn't fully understand but couldn't walk away from. When the evening finally came, he found himself sitting at the small corner table they always chose. The one near the window with a view of the rainy street. Rachel arrived a few minutes later. Her umbrella dripping, her hair slightly damp. She looked tired, as if she hadn't slept well. She smiled faintly when she saw him, but there was no light in her eyes. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey," she replied, sitting across from him. For a while, neither of them spoke. The sound of rain filled the silence between them. Finally, Rachel exhaled and said, "I didn't sleep last night. I kept thinking about everything." Ethan nodded. "Me too." She looked down at her hands, the ring glinting faintly under the cafe lights. "I shouldn't have said what I did last night. I shouldn't have let things get this far. You haven't done anything wrong," Ethan said, though his voice lacked conviction. She shook her head. "That's the thing. I haven't done anything, but I feel like I have. I keep waiting for this guilt to fade, but it doesn't." He leaned forward, his tone gentle. "Rachel, I don't want to make things harder for you. If this, whatever it is hurting you, then maybe we should." He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. She looked up, eyes glassy. "It's not you that's hurting me, Ethan. It's my life. It's waking up every morning and realizing I'm married to someone who stopped seeing me years ago. Daniel's not a bad man. He's just not the man I thought I married. He's distant, cold, we live together, but it feels like two strangers sharing a roof." Ethan's chest tightened. He didn't know what to say, so he let her speak. She continued, her voice trembling. "I tried to fix it. I tried to be patient, supportive, everything a wife should be. But after a while, you get tired of trying alone. Then you came along, and for the first time in years, I felt something." Her words hit him like a wave, unexpected, overwhelming, and painful. He looked at her carefully. "Rachel, I care about you. Probably more than I should. But you have to know I never meant to come between you and your husband." "I know," she said quickly. "You didn't. You just reminded me of what it feels like to be alive again." The rain grew heavier outside, blurring the streetlights. The air between them thickened with everything unsaid. "I can't explain it," she whispered. "You make me feel seen, Ethan. Not as someone's wife. Not as someone's obligation. Just as me." He swallowed hard, fighting to stay calm. "Then what do you want to do?" She hesitated, looking out the window. "I don't know. I can't just walk away from 10 years of marriage. But I can't go back to pretending either." Ethan leaned back, feeling torn between logic and emotion. "Maybe you need to take time, figure out what you really want. I don't want to be your escape." Her eyes softened. "You're not an escape. You're a reminder that love can still exist even when life feels empty." Those words lingered in his heart long after they left the cafe. Over the next few days, they tried to create distance. No messages, no long talks, no stolen glances. But it didn't last. Every time Rachel walked by, Ethan felt her presence like gravity. Every time he caught her eye, something inside him stirred. One evening, as the office prepared for a big presentation, Rachel stayed late again. Ethan was there too, going over slides in the conference room. She walked in quietly, holding a folder, and said, "You forgot this." Their hands brushed as she passed it to him. That small touch, so innocent, yet so electric, made them both freeze. "Rachel," he said quietly. She looked at him, eyes uncertain. "We said we'd keep things professional." "I know," he replied, his voice low. "I'm trying." "So am I," she whispered. "But every time I see you, I forget how." The silence that followed was heavier than words. Then she stepped back, took a deep breath, and said, "I think I'm going to take a break. From work, from everything." He frowned. "What do you mean?" "I need space. To think. To breathe. Daniel's away for another week, and I can't keep living like this, half alive, half pretending." Ethan didn't try to stop her. He just nodded, though the thought of not seeing her again twisted something deep inside him. Before leaving, she said softly, "Ethan, whatever happens, thank you. For listening, for caring, for making me feel something real again." Then she walked away, leaving him standing there, caught between relief and heartbreak. Days passed. Her desk remained empty, her laughter gone from the office. The silence felt endless. He tried to bury himself in work, but every song, every quiet evening, reminded him of her. Then one night there was a knock at his door. He opened it and there she was. Rachel stood in the doorway, soaked from the rain, shivering slightly. She looked both fragile and fierce, as if she had finally made a decision. "Rachel?" he whispered. "I couldn't stay away," she said, her voice trembling. "I tried, but I kept thinking about you, about us, and I realized I'm done living in silence." Ethan felt his heart race, but he didn't move closer. "Are you saying you left him?" Tears filled her eyes. "Not yet. But I will. Not because of you, Bee, because I need to find myself again. You just help me see that." For a moment, neither spoke. The rain poured behind her, and the world outside seemed to disappear. "I don't know what's next," she said softly, "but I know I don't want to lose what we have not yet." He looked at her, feeling both hope and fear. "Rachel, whatever happens, I just want you to be happy, even if that means I'm not a part of it." She smiled through her tears. "You already are." She turned to leave, but he stopped her gently. "Wait." She turned back, eyes glistening. "Take care of yourself," he said. "Don't lose the person you're becoming." She nodded slowly, whispering, "I won't." Then she left. That night, Ethan stood by the window, watching the rain. He didn't know where her journey would lead, but he knew this wasn't an ending. It was a turning point. For her, for him, for both of them. The next morning, he found an envelope on his desk. Inside was a note written in neat, careful handwriting. "Ethan, thank you for reminding me that my heart still beats. Rachel." He held the note for a long time, feeling the quiet ache of something beautiful, yet incomplete. He didn't see her again for weeks after that, but every time it rained, he thought of Hertha, woman who wore her ring but rediscovered her heart. And though she was gone, she had changed him forever. The days after Rachel left were strangely quiet. Ethan tried to fill his time with work, friends, anything that would distract him from the lingering emptiness in his chest. But nothing worked. He'd wake up, make coffee, stare at his phone, and stop himself from messaging her. Every part of his routine felt incomplete, as if a piece of his life had gone missing. Weeks turned into months. The city shifted from gray winter to the first touch of spring. Flowers returned to the sidewalks. People smiled again, but Ethan still carried the same stillness inside him. He often thought about Rachel, where she might be, what she might be doing. Whether she had finally found peace. One morning, he received a letter. The handwriting was instantly familiar. His hands trembled as he opened it. "Ethan, I've been meaning to write for weeks, but didn't know how to start. I left Portland. I'm staying with my sister in Seattle for now. I needed to breathe. I needed to remember who I was before everything fell apart. Daniel and I are officially separating. It's painful, but it feels like the right thing. For both of us. He deserves honesty, and so do I. I don't know what comes next. But I want you to know that what we shared wasn't wrong, it was real. You reminded me that love can still be gentle, even when life isn't. Take care of yourself. Rachel." He read it again and again. There was no promise of us, no talk of a future together. Just gratitude on closure. For a few moments, Ethan felt both heartbreak and relief. She had chosen herself, her healing, her truth. It hurt, but it also made him respect her even more. That night, he walked by the cafe where they had spent so many evenings talking about life, dreams, and the quiet ache of wanting something they couldn't have. The window seat was empty. For the first time, he didn't stop. He just kept walking, realizing that maybe letting go was part of loving someone too. But life has a strange way of bringing people full circle. 6 months later, Ethan was at a marketing conference in Seattle. He wasn't expecting anything extraordinary. It was just another work trip, another city. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. On the second day, as he was heading out of the hotel lobby, he heard a familiar voice behind him. "Ethan." He turned. Rachel stood there, holding a cup of coffee, looking surprised but calm. Her hair was shorter now, her eyes clearer. She looked lighter, as if a storm had finally passed. He froze for a second before smiling. "Rachel, wow, I didn't expect to see you here." "Neither did I," she said with a soft laugh. "I started working with a nonprofit in Seattle. They partnered with the conference organizers." There was an awkward pause. Both of them had 100 things to say, but didn't know where to begin. Finally, Ethan said, "You look happy." Rachel nodded. "I am. It took time, but I'm finally okay." He smiled faintly. "I'm glad. You deserve that." She looked at him for a moment, as if studying the man she once shared her heart with. "And you? How have you been?" He shrugged gently. "Better, work's good. Life's quiet," she chuckled. "You always did like quiet." They both laughed, and for the first time in a long while, it didn't hurt to be near her. They decided to sit down at a cafe nearby. The conversation flowed easily, like old friends catching up after years apart. She told him about leaving Daniel, about rediscovering herself, about how she started painting again. He told her about new projects, travel, and how he'd finally learned to cook without burning everything. At one point, she grew thoughtful. "You know, I used to think what happened between us was a mistake, but it wasn't. It was necessary." Ethan looked at her curiously. "Necessary?" She nodded. "Yes, because it woke me up. It showed me that life isn't supposed to be lived halfway. You taught me that. You reminded me that love shouldn't feel like a cage, should feel like freedom." He smiled softly. "And now you're free." She returned his smile. "So are you." They sat in silence for a while, watching the people outside, the laughter, the movement of everyday life. There was peace in that moment, a calm understanding that what they had shared didn't need to be more than it was. As the sun began to set, Rachel glanced at her watch. "I should go. My sister's waiting." Ethan nodded. "Of course." She stood, hesitated, and then said, "Ethan, thank you. For being kind when you didn't have to. For letting me find my way." He smiled. "Thank you for showing me that love doesn't always need to end in forever to be real." Rachel's eyes softened. "Goodbye, Ethan. Goodbye, Rachel." She turned and walked away, her silhouette fading into the evening crowd. Ethan stood there for a while, watching her go, not with sadness this time, but with quiet gratitude. He realized something important. Not all love stories are meant to last forever. Some exist to teach us, to change us, to remind us what it means to truly feel. When he returned to Portland, life slowly found a new rhythm. The office was different now, new faces, new projects, but sometimes when the rain fell outside, he'd look out the window and remember her smile. Years passed. He never married, though he met people and had his share of almosts. Yet Rachel's memory stayed with him, not as pain, but as a story that shaped who he became. One day while cleaning his apartment, he found the note she had left years ago. "Ethan, thank you for reminding me that my heart still beats." He smiled. It no longer made him ache. It just made him grateful for the love that came, changed him, and left him stronger sometimes. Love doesn't need a happy ending. Sometimes its purpose is to awaken something inside us that had been asleep for too long. Ethan understood that now. And as the rain tapped softly against his window, he whispered to the quiet night, "Thank you, Rachel." The sound of rain became his closure, gentle, endless, and real.